One year, the headlines were about platinum chains, custom Rolls-Royces, and a stack of hits that made Offset one of the most bankable names to ever come out of Atlanta. The next year, the headlines were about unpaid casino markers, a divorce filing, a $10 million catalog fight, and a federal tax lien. This is not a story about one bad night at the tables or one reckless purchase. This is the story of how an empire built on streaming numbers, touring revenue, and luxury branding can quietly lose money in 100 different directions until the math stops working. And by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly how someone who once lived like he was untouchable ended up surrounded by financial pressure from every angle. We are not here to repeat internet rumors as fact. We are walking through what was actually reported and what was actually filed in court. Kiari Kendrill Cephas was born December 14, 1991, in Lawrenceville, Georgia. He grew up bouncing between family members after his mother passed from cancer when he was a teenager, largely raised by his grandmother in the Atlanta area. It was in that environment that he formed a tight bond with his cousins Quavius Marshall, Quavo, and Kershnik Kari Ball, Takeoff. The three formed Migos around 2008, grinding through the Atlanta regional mixtape circuit before a 2013 single called Versace, built around a hypnotic triplet flow, caught fire locally. When Drake jumped on the remix, it reached a national audience. That moment introduced the world to a delivery style that would go on to influence an entire generation of rappers. They signed with Quality Control Music, an Atlanta-based label with ties to 300 Entertainment and Atlantic Records. That structure would matter later. In January 2017, Culture debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, powered by Bad and Boujee featuring Lil Uzi Vert, which itself hit #1 on the Hot 100. Culture 2 debuted at #1 in January 2018. Culture 3 followed in 2021. Migos became one of the most commercially dominant rap groups of the entire streaming era. Industry estimates placed them among the highest-grossing touring rap acts of the late 2010s. Offset's individual income stacked on top of all of that. His debut solo album Father of Four debuted top 5 on the Billboard 200 in February 2019. He pursued endorsement deals tied to fashion and lifestyle branding. Publishing income from his writing credits across the Migos catalog added another layer. Public estimates put his net worth in the range of tens of millions of dollars, some outlets estimating as high as $50 million at various points, factoring in real estate, royalties, brand deals, and nearly a decade at the top of mainstream hip-hop. That is the foundation. Now let's talk about where it started cracking. Offset's public spending habits became a recurring subject of media coverage, not because reporters dug through his accounts, but because he showed the world himself. Custom diamond jewelry commissioning was a defining part of his public image across years, with pieces regularly running into the hundreds of thousands of dollars each. His car collection featured multiple luxury and exotic vehicles, including high-end Rolls-Royce models. Designer fashion for award shows, fashion weeks, and events meant consistent spending even when some pieces were gifted or sponsored. Private jet charters, standard for touring artists, can run $10,000 to $25,000 per flight, and for someone with a year-round travel schedule, that adds up to a significant recurring cost that never makes one dramatic headline. Real estate in upscale Atlanta neighborhoods came with its own property taxes, security costs, and maintenance. The flex culture embedded in hip-hop creates a specific financial trap for artists at this level. Unlike a regular person who can quietly scale back spending without anyone noticing, a mainstream rap artist's image is often tied directly to visible success. Pulling back on jewelry or cars can read to fans and industry peers as a sign of decline, which creates pressure to keep spending even when it is not financially smart. Then came the gambling chapter. In 2024, reporting emerged about a lawsuit filed against Offset by Motor City Casino Hotel in Detroit. The lawsuit centered on unpaid casino markers totaling more than $100,000. Casino markers are short-term credit lines that casinos extend to high-value gamblers, letting them play on borrowed money rather than cash on hand. When those markers go unpaid past their due date, the debt can escalate from civil collection into something with criminal implications depending on jurisdiction. The filing was not speculation or rumor. It was a court document connecting Offset's name to documented gambling losses. Online commentary ran much further than what the filing actually said, with personalities using the lawsuit to speculate about the broader scope of a gambling habit, well past what was documented. What we can say with confidence is that gambling with marker credit means losses compound faster than gambling with cash already set aside. And when that debt becomes public through litigation, it is a reputational problem layered directly on top of the financial one. At roughly the same time, Offset made a major business decision that hit his finances from a completely different direction. In interviews, he has spoken about spending approximately $10 million pursuing greater ownership and control over his own music. That move came in the context of Quality Control's 2023 sale of a majority stake to HYBE, the South Korean entertainment conglomerate behind BTS, in a deal reported to be valued around $300 million. That kind of corporate transaction raises legitimate questions for signed artists about who ultimately controls their masters, their publishing rights, and their long-term royalty streams. For Offset, whose entire decade of recorded work was tied to that label ecosystem, the idea of those rights being managed by a structure he did not directly negotiate created strong incentive to fight for direct ownership, even at enormous cost. Artists across the industry have made similar plays because owning your catalog means owning the royalty stream for life. But $10 million is $10 million, regardless of the strategic logic behind it. Now let's talk about the relationship chapter, because this is the part most people are already familiar with, and the part that added the most financial complexity in the shortest amount of time. Offset met Cardi B in 2017, when both of their careers were exploding simultaneously. Bodak Yellow had just become a cultural phenomenon, and Migos were riding the success of culture. He proposed to her publicly at the Wireless Festival in London in October 2017, with a ring estimated at between $500,000 and over $1 million. What came out later was that they had actually already married privately in September 2017, making that public moment a celebration of a commitment already made. They welcomed their daughter Kultur in July 2018, a son Wave in September 2021, and twins in 2024. Offset became known for elaborate public gift gestures throughout the relationship: custom cars for birthdays and holidays, luxury items on anniversaries, an annual pattern that fans tracked and anticipated. In interviews, he has referenced spending approximately $12 million across the relationship when accounting for gifts, travel, lifestyle support, and family expenses accumulated over years. That figure reflects not one purchase, but a sustained lifestyle that two of the most visible artists in the genre were expected to maintain in the public eye. Any visible scaling back would have read to millions of observers as a sign of trouble in the marriage, which created exactly the opposite pressure: to keep spending even when it made limited financial sense. In September 2024, Cardi B filed for divorce. The proceedings became a significant part of the celebrity news cycle, with reporting covering custody arrangements, conversations about asset division, spousal and child support obligations, and how shared assets accumulated over roughly 7 years would be divided. Legal fees alone in a high-profile separation like this run significant costs. Dividing years of jointly purchased real estate, vehicles, and luxury assets, while navigating potentially adjusting custody-related financial obligations, represents a major inflection point on top of everything else already in motion. Adding to the pressure, public records and reporting in previous years referenced a federal tax lien connected to Offset reflecting unpaid tax obligations reported at over $1 million. A tax lien is a legal claim the government places against property when taxes go unpaid. Not a criminal allegation, but something that complicates a person's ability to sell assets or secure loans until it is resolved. For someone with multiple revenue streams across touring, royalties, endorsements, and irregular payment schedules, quarterly estimated tax payments can fall behind even during periods of significant gross income, particularly when that income is not being managed with disciplined professional oversight. Here is the part that most coverage skips over entirely. The gap between what a headline says someone earned and what they actually kept is almost always enormous. Management fees typically run 15 to 20% of gross earnings. Federal and state income taxes for high earners easily exceed 35 to 40% combined. Touring generates large gross revenue, but can eat 50% or more of ticket revenue in production costs before the artist sees their share. Publishing splits with labels reduce royalty income further. When you run all of those deductions against the estimates that get thrown around publicly, the actual retained wealth looks dramatically different from the headline number. That is the real math sitting underneath this entire story. Offset's situation is not one catastrophic decision. It is the casino lawsuit and the catalog buyback and the relationship spending and the divorce and the tax lien and the management percentages and the touring overhead and the jewelry and the cars and the private flights, each one reasonable or even necessary in isolation, all compounding across a decade, until the foundation that once seemed unshakable starts showing the pressure. He has continued releasing music independently and spoken in interviews about wanting greater control over his masters and business going forward. The story is genuinely not over, but the lesson sitting underneath it is one that extends well beyond Offset. The distance between what you earn and what you keep is not determined by one decision. It is determined by every decision made consistently over years. What are your thoughts on where Offset goes from here? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this one.